Good evening and I guess good afternoon to many, and welcome fellow STS members, and thank you for joining this town hall on diversity, equity, and inclusion. My name is Tom MacGillivray, and I have the honor of serving as the STS president. Wanted to get you up to date from what's happened since we've all met in San Diego. Since the annual meeting, we have engaged in many conversations with colleagues both inside and outside of the STS to hear their thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of our ongoing efforts to strengthen our inclusive culture. I've recently appointed a presidential task force representing a broad representation of our membership to advise our nominating committee on the selection of future STS leaders. We've engaged a consultant, Dr. James Pogue, to help bolster our existing commitment to DE&I and to ensure that the STS has the policies, practices, and structure in place to truly represent and support our diverse group of surgeons. Tonight, James will be my co-host for this town hall. If you didn't get a chance to see the introductory video that James and I recorded last month, I encourage you to watch it. We'll post a link in the chat. So tonight, this town hall, this session, has been designed to be as true of a town hall experience as we can do on Zoom. It is for and it is about you. We want your input and we want your perspectives on the role that DE&I should play in our specialty and in our society. This is your opportunity to speak up and have your voice be heard. We do encourage you to ask questions and make comments in the chat. We also encourage you to keep your camera on so that will enhance and personalize our interactions tonight. For the next 30 minutes or so, James will lead a discussion, which will also include live polling. And we'll save the last 20 minutes or so that will be dedicated to participant you, question and answers via the Zoom chat. We do promise that we will answer all of the questions, even if we don't get to discuss them, depending on how many there are. So please keep your questions and your comments respectful. It is certainly okay to disagree, but please be courteous and polite. Thank you. So James, thanks for joining me tonight. Over the last several weeks, you have had several one-on-one conversations with surgeon leaders and a deep dive session with our board of directors. Can you tell us what your observations have been about those discussions and the opportunities that are available for the STS?
Sure. Well, first, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to work with you. I enjoy this kind of work. I love it and it makes me happy, but I know that sometimes it can be scratchy for other folks. So I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to work with you, to help you, to learn from you. Second, I would say that there is a passion, not just around the work that you obviously do on a day-to-day basis, but about being the best kind of leaders that you can be, given whatever the circumstances that are happening around you and within the organization. Sure, you've had this catalyst of a moment that came several months ago, but the reality that prior to that, there are other perhaps smaller or bigger or bumpier things that occurred as well. And now we have this chance to unpack it, reorganize it, and do so in a way that pushes the organization forward. So understanding and hearing that passion over and over again from people, their willingness to lean in, to dive in, to pick it apart, to poke at one another. And sometimes it's not all that comfortable, but how do we get to this better place together? That's been quite motivating. And then the last thing that I would say is that I was kind of, it was kind of suggested to them, maybe, just maybe, folks may not be willing to raise their hand and say, hey, I've got something to say. Hey, there's something I need to say. There's something I must say. People have not been as hesitant as I thought. People have been as, hey, I'll wait my turn, but by God, I've got something to say. So that's been good too. And so I just want to reinforce what Tom said a moment ago. If you haven't seen the video that we did previously, please go out and take a look at it. It's each one of these steps is one step on the path to get us further along. I mean, we're basically like it's like the Tonight Show now. It's like he and I out here doing things. We'll probably do 3 or 4 more of these. Who knows how many? We'll make a little money off of this. We'll develop our own thing and we'll go on tour. That's the plan. It's like Beyonce. It's like Jay-Z and Beyonce. You can be Jay-Z, Tom. I will be Beyonce.
Wow. Well, it's nice to hear that our members aren't shy and soft-spoken. So that
You're just gonna skip over the fact that you get to be Jay-Z? You're just gonna skip right over that.
I'm processing that right now. I'm processing it. It's a little much for me right now.
I understand. There's a lot. It's a lot going on.
So the town hall is just another step in this path. So after the town hall, what's next?
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the presentation, but after the town hall, we're going to do, next step is you're going to be involved in an assessment. By you, I mean the people that are on this screen and throughout the membership. We're going to be asking for your input. There'll be a survey that goes out. We'll be talking to some of you all in focus groups. We'll be talking to some of you all in interviews. Of course, we can't get to everyone. So in the survey is the place where you can absolutely have your voice heard. And yes, we will look at the data and the comments that you might have the opportunity to write. I know everybody's busy. Everybody has a lot of things that they could be doing other than this right here today and other than responding to some other survey. But please, these are all opportunities for you to be heard. And so think of them that way. So that'll be the next steps. We'll gather all of that data and then we'll report that data back. And what we'll get it to is that what is a snapshot of what STS looks like today? What do we want it to look like tomorrow? And then we'll help you build the roadmap to get you from point A to point B, from where you are to where you want to be. And of course, it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take a lot of effort, commitment, but one step at a time. We have each of these different learning opportunities. Each of these are an opportunity to hear your voice. We add that to all of the data we're going to receive from the survey, the focus groups, the interviews. We say, this is the snapshot of where you are, where you want to be. We build the roadmap and then off to work.
So James, you brought up a really good point when we had that deep dive. Usually we say that silence is affirmation. You said silence was disagreement. So we want everybody to answer the survey. We want everybody to ask the questions that they have. So James, can you just tell us briefly what's the timeline? How do you see us pulling this all together?
Sure. I anticipate us being able to press go on the survey here within the next couple of weeks. We've got a few dots to dot and T's to cross, but understand that the team, the staff up at STS is going to be very informative about, hey, it's coming, it's on its way, it's coming tomorrow, respond to it, right? So you're going to get multiple opportunities to know that it's coming, to be involved and engaged. But the hope is once we start, we're about 4 weeks from being finished. So we're not talking about 2, 3, 4 months before you get the results, get the snapshot and get the roadmap done.
Well, James, the floor is yours.
Okay, Jay-Z, here we go. It's okay, everyone. If you all want to start to call Tom Jay-Z, it's okay. I based upon the power vested in me by whomever, he's Jay-Z for the moment. All right. So again, feel free to grab your questions and put them into the chat. We've got folks here going to grab those and we're going to respond to much of them later. I'm going to do my best as I'm going to share a PowerPoint and run through that with us. I may not be able to see your questions as they pop up, so I will get to those after the fact. So in terms of just how we're gonna move things forward. All right, so let me share my screen. And if I could get a couple thumbs up from somebody to tell me that you see something. All right, I see a couple thumbs up and that's good. Christopher, I didn't see your thumb go up. I'm not gonna say I took it personally that I didn't see your thumb go up. That's okay, it's all right. I saw a couple of, I see, okay, you're smiling now. That's enough love for me to move forward, appreciate you. All right, so just a little bit of history about who we are over at JPE and how we operate over here. One, I really believe that most folks are really, really good people. It's the rare person that's a terrible, horrible human being. And generally they stand out, right? And what I have found in our board meeting and what I find as I travel across the country, across the globe and try to work with these issues, most people are really good people and they really want to be inclusive leaders. They want to be able to say, no matter who you are, no matter how you are, no matter where you're from, I can lead you. I can help you. I can help you develop into be a great professional, a great surgeon, a better person. I can teach you something. But I do think that one of the pieces that's lacking is critical thinking, feedback, and conversation, especially in a kind way, especially in a loving way, especially in a mentoring way, right? Especially in a caring way. So that work that many of us did when we were coming up K through 12, to learn how to think critically, how to give feedback, and how to have those back and forth conversations. I think there's been a devaluation of that, unfortunately. So we're going to have to really work to grab all of that. And I think that most people don't know that sometimes the thing that they said was harmful to the person in front of them, to the group that's in front of them, to the team that's in front of them. And we have to find the better ways to say, hey, James, that was not the best way for you to communicate to me. There's a better way for you to do that. And sometimes that takes time for us to learn better ways to do it. So in terms of these best practices, that just global best practices I might share. One, give and expect grace. There will be times when you said the thing that annoyed someone, that hurt somebody, that cut somebody, that scratched someone. Okay. That's how the world sometimes operates. But we can also expect it when I do make a mistake, because I will, right? When I stumble over my words and say the wrong thing, and I will, that you will be kind enough to tap me on the shoulder and say, James, that's not how we do it over here. Let me help you be better. That we can set a baseline for being uncomfortable. Discomfort is how we grow. And one of the things that I do in my spare time is I teach dance internationally. And so I use this as an analogy here that in order for there to be a great team, you must have both followers and leaders. And you can't have a great dance, you can't have a great team without both followers and leaders. Listening as hard as we're talking, communicating as well as we can, especially when it's bumpy, especially when it's awkward, especially when the circumstances make it harder. And that you as the leaders must go first. And sometimes, yes, you got to do it in public. And that takes a particular brand of courage. This last thing is that accept that it is impossible. And I have it in quotes on purpose. By impossible, I mean that there are things that all of us have done that were probably impossible to do. There are reasons that each of us should not be sitting in the seats that we're sitting in with the backgrounds that we have, or the backgrounds that we came from. It was impossible for you to do what you're doing right now. And this is just the next impossible thing that you get to do, right? It's just the next impossible thing. So I also would ask that we enter these conversations in good faith. And what do I mean when I say good faith? What I mean is an openness and honesty. As open and as honest as you possibly can be. And then squeeze out a little bit more, because these are tough times. With vulnerability and transparency, what I mean there is the version of vulnerability and transparency. Let me tell you something that's really deep and personal about my soft insides. That counts. I'm also asking for the kind that comes with risk, where we're willing to say, whoa, wait a second, Tom, that's not how we handle it. I think that we should do this better. You said this in the meeting, you said this in your email, and I think that there's a different way to do this. And sometimes, yeah, we have to do that in public. I'm talking about with empathy, the cognitive version of empathy, not the emotional version of empathy. What do I mean by that? By cognitive empathy, I mean our ability to understand what someone is feeling, versus emotional empathy, which is our ability to feel what someone is feeling. I'm asking us to work hard to press towards cognitive empathy. We're not always going to be able to feel what someone else is feeling, but we can work hard to try to understand what they are feeling. And then lastly, without knowing what the results will be, there will be times when we just have to move forward and press forward. And we know going this way over here is better than where we are. So we're going to head this direction. Don't know exactly where we're going to land, but it's sure better than here. Right. So that's good faith for the moment. So I'm hoping we can begin that in this conversation, to have this conversation in good faith, that we can continue to move forward in good faith. Can I get a few thumbs up on the good faith? I see a few faces. Let me see if everybody on the screen I see gives thumbs up. I see you, Brian, Francie. Okay, good. Graham gave me a whole thing, a graphic one. Great. I like that. Appreciate you. Thank you. All right, so let's get into it. Oh, by the way, see, people say that, I saw this commercial that when you do puppies, people feel better about what's going to happen next. So, this is an opportunity to smile and be warm. This is the smile, be warm moment. Okay, and we move forward. Great. All right, so I like to start with kind of baselining language, making sure that we're all speaking from the same sheet of music. So what do I mean by that? For today, I'm going to ask if we can agree that the definition of diversity will be the full range of human difference. Everything about you, everything about me, that makes us similar or different, right? All of it. Favorite color, kind of car you drive, what state you live in, how many children you have, where you were raised, in the city, in the country, in the suburbs. All of that matters in terms of diversity. Meanwhile, inclusivity, for the purposes of today, I'm going to ask that we can agree that it is the level of belonging in an environment. Do I feel like I belong to your team? Do I feel like I belong to STS? Do I feel like I belong in this organization that's driven by you as its leaders, by your key performance indicators or your KPIs, your policies, practices, and procedures? For today, for the purpose of this presentation, so we can all be speaking the same language, I'm hoping that we can agree to that. Can I get a couple thumbs up? Would that be okay? I see you, Neil. Thank you so much. All right, I see you. Appreciate it. All right, great, great, great. Now, next, my guess is that most, if not all of us, have had some version of bias training in our past, right? So the lesson from this slide is we can't possibly know what our biases are, our unconscious biases are. We can't possibly know what our unconscious biases are. If we did, they would be conscious. Is everybody okay with that? Neil, you're eating snacks. You staying with me? You with me? See you there, Neil. All right, all right. Okay, I said a moment ago that diversity is everything about you and I that makes us similar or different. I want to drill down just a bit. While diversity is all of these things, I am suggesting that these 9 are the 9 most impactful areas of diversity in our lives. That every day of the week, my age is more impactful to how I see the world and how the world sees me than my favorite color, right? Geography, where I'm from. Am I from the States or am I from India? Am I from the southern region of the States or am I from the Northeast? That it matters where I'm from. Socioeconomics, we've bundled in there educational background, parental situation, family dynamics, economics, how much money we make, et cetera. And there's an argument, maybe we could peel those out. I'd be happy to do that. But if we can agree that the lesson of this slide is there are some components of diversity that are more impactful than others. There are some areas in diversity that are more impactful than others. That's the lesson from this slide. Is everybody okay with that? Yes, yes. All right, I see you, John. Appreciate you. A couple other people didn't put their hands up. I'm not going to call names. Dr. Calhoun, I see you over there. How you doing, brother? Good to see you again. How's everything? All right. Also, I want to talk about the model that we use over at JPE. Now, this model basically says that if we want to get to the right-hand side, which is to say we want a different kind of culture, a change culture, an improved culture. In order to do that, we have to start on the left-hand side with meaningful interactions with people, places, and systems. This might be considered a meaningful interaction with people. Or when somebody says, hey, James, can we go to lunch and I want to talk to you about how I can mentor you better, because you might be a little bit different than me. When I go to someone, I say, hey, Sarah, I see you you seem like you're celebrating these holidays differently than I might. Can you help me understand why that's important to you? Right? That could be a meaningful interaction with people, places, and systems. Systems might be, how do we organize our nominating committee? So we're going to investigate that and have a meaningful interaction with it. These are the kinds of conversations that might challenge and reinforce our belief systems. Maybe it absolutely says, hey, I believe what I believe and I'm locked in. Or it scratches at my beliefs. It scratches to around how I was raised. Was I able to see everything I wanted to see, or were there things happening out here that now that my blinders are taking down, I see something different, right? And this can begin to impact our decision-making over time, which leads us to this different culture, improved culture, hopefully, better culture. But again, it's over there because we're doing this in good faith and we're not exactly sure where the plane's gonna land. So if that's our model, and we've got a few definitions, and we have an understanding that some components of diversity are more impactful than others, let's talk a little bit about this, how we're going to assess STS over the next few weeks. So this is what we call our inclusive leadership assessment model. It has 5 phases. So after we gather the data, the organization will land in one of these 5 spaces. And we're going to not only look at the organization globally, but we're also going to look at it through those 9 different lenses that I mentioned before. Those 9 different aspects of diversity, the DIBS Big 9. So all 9 of those in each one of these 5 components. So a person or an organization or a team could be in the hesitant space for race, but in the uncomfortable space for sexuality. That's the snapshot we'll provide to you after we gather the data. Right. So I'm going to dig into each one of these until we can be, again, working from the same sheet of music. The first is hesitant. If we find ourselves in a hesitant place, we might say, look, I just want to be around people who are like me. However, I define like me. Geographically, maybe that means I just want to be around people from the South, or I just want to be around people from Canada. I just want to be around people from the Southeast Asia. Right. I might also say that these non-business conversations, they don't belong in the office. They don't belong in the surgical space. They don't belong in the hospital. Anything about this other difference that doesn't belong here. I don't have issues with people and difference and all that. I like people. I love people. No problem. I just don't think that we have a lot in common when it comes to this. Or someone might say, look, I'm deeply scared that if I raise my hand and say something, I may get canceled. I may get fired. My parents may be embarrassed. My kids may be embarrassed. I don't want to deal with it. You don't have to check all of these boxes to be hesitant, but maybe you just check one. And maybe it's you're in a different place for race versus sexuality versus geography versus religion versus politics versus any of the other DIBS Big 9. But sometimes we may find ourselves in the hesitant space. We also then might find ourselves in the uncomfortable space or discomfort space. You might say, look, I work around different people all the time. It's a function of my job. Sure, absolutely. But it's a challenge to be around these different people. And when those non-business conversations come up around difference, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm not all the way there with that. And I'm really not convinced that there's a business case, if you will, for doing this. You know, I don't think I'll get fired. I don't think I'll get canceled, but I might get embarrassed if I raise my hand and try to say something. This is not the safest time to say what I think or to speak my truth. Right? As a result, I'm not really comfortable or confident in any definitions I might give around diversity, inclusion, bias, equity, whatever it might be. Then there's investigating. These folks might say, look, I work around different people all the time. Man, it's thought-provoking. I am learning a lot. These non-business conversations about difference when they happen, they're interesting, but I don't really see the strong business connection. I'm at the edges. I can probably say, I understand why it's good to have equal numbers of men and women in decision-making roles. People bring different ideas to the table, and women are different than men in certain ways. But if someone asked me to peel it back and to make sense out of it and to defend my point with vigor and integrity and data and be robust about it, I would back off. I'm not all the way there on that. I want to learn more. Maybe I need to learn more. Maybe I should learn more. I could learn more, but I haven't closed the loop. I'm not reading that extra book. I'm not watching that podcast. I'm not taking my colleague or friend or peer out for lunch or dinner and asking them questions about who and what and when and where they are. I haven't done that yet. Sure, I talk a lot, so maybe I could define diversity and inclusion and bias, but I'm not clear on the distinct differences and the overlap when that occurs, right? That's investigating. Then we get into experimenting. These folks will say, look, I'm working hard to try to get better at this. It is difficult. It is not easy for me. I grit my teeth, and sometimes it's stressful, but I go in there. I believe these non-business conversations make us better. They help me to know the person across from me a little bit better. They help me develop deeper connections. And those deeper connections help us win, help us perform better. And because I'm doing this work, because I'm pushing myself to do it, even though it's not easy, I'm getting more and more clarity on the overlap and the differences on some of these terms, on some of these experiences, and on some of my biases, et cetera. Then there's engaging. Folks in the engaging space might say, look, I prefer to be around people that are not like me. If I'm in a room full of people like me, I go and find another room. I would just prefer to be around different folks. I know that increases innovation and creativity. I am certain of it. I think these non-business conversations are normal. I think they deepen our connection to one another, and I think deep connections make for better teams. I believe that I can say what I need to say. If I need to tap somebody on the shoulder, I am comfortable and confident doing that. And if somebody taps me on the shoulder to get better, to learn something, I'm okay with that. And with as much grace and respect and maybe forgiveness at times, I'm in it. I am certain I can define diversity, inclusion, and bias, and I'm clear on the differences and overlap. Right. So as I mentioned, a person can be in different places in one of these phases for each of the different areas of the DIBS Big Nine, for example. Again, I might be hesitant when it comes to geography. I just want to be around people that are from where I'm from. On the other hand, I need to be extremely open when it comes to religion. That could be all the way in the engaging space, and that's okay. What moves us in between these phases, because we do move, is challenge and support. Just a quick story. I found myself in the hesitant space during the summer of 2020. I only wanted to be around people like me. And that version of like me was very narrow. It was people that were more or less my age, that I went to school with, undergraduate, who were African-American and who were male. That's it. My world was really small. And were it not for a friend who called me on the phone and she says, hey, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing the same thing everybody else is doing. Don't you see they're burning down the country? This is ridiculous. I can't believe that we're in this kind of place. And she says, well, shouldn't you be doing something different? I said, ma'am, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And she says, well, don't you consider yourself a leader in this space? Shouldn't you be helping us to understand what's going on? Shouldn't you be framing a discussion for us? She and I didn't go to school together undergraduate. She's an engineer at Lockheed Martin, serious, smart lady. But she provided me the challenge and the support I needed to move out of the hesitant space into the experimenting space and to do my job better. We can all be in one of these different places at any given time. The idea here is you get to be wherever you are, but where would you like to be? Your organization is wherever it is, but where do you want it to be? So what we're going to do now is we're going to get into that live polling that we talked about at the top of the hour. So I'm going to pull down the PowerPoint. And we get ready for this first question. Now, this first one is a little testy. So I'm going to ask you to, you're going to respond on the Zoom and you're going to be, clicking some things on your screen there. But take a moment, inhale, exhale, take a look at the first one and jump off a cliff with me. So let's take a look at the first question. Now, this may be a bit much for some people, so I can understand if you want to tap out. This may not be for everybody. It may be too much. Alejandro, I see you smiling. You got to make a decision there. You got to make a decision. 10-9-8, 7-6-5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1. What do we have in terms of results? It appears that a hot dog is not a sandwich, according to 54% of us. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but we'll go ahead and let you know that that's where STS comes down. Meanwhile, 8% is too hot for them. It's too hot, which is okay. You get to be exactly where you are. You get to be exactly where you are. So now that we have some information and we know the technology is working, let's take a look at the next question. Today, May 25th, where would you rate STA total membership on the Inclusive Leadership Assessment scale? Today, where would you rank the organization? 10-9-8, 7-6-5. Maybe it's hesitant. We want to be around people that are like ourselves. I see it all the time. People are clicked up left and right. Discomfort. People, I gotta work with these different people, and that's how it is. Investigating, I should do more, we should do more, but no, we're not doing it yet. Experimenting, we're trying hard to close the loop. What do we think? What are our answers? What do we have? About 43% of us saying investigating, right? Meaning we're not quite closing the loop yet, but we think this is interesting. We know it's ensorceling, what have you. Discomfort at 33%. I got to do this, and I got to be around different kinds of people of different types. Okay. And 4% in the engaging, 13% in the hesitant. All right.
James?
Yes.
We can't see the data. Were you planning to show to us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I see the results. Do people not see the results?
I can see
Yeah, I
it.
can see it.
I can see it.
I can see it.
I can see it.
I'm clearly different than everybody.
Well, we've got one different person. So let me, in case other people cannot see it, I'll run through it. Hesitant at 13%, discomfort at 33%, investigating at 43%, experimenting at 7%, engaging at 4%. Okay, and that's where we would rate STS today. Let's take a look at the next question. Tomorrow, where do we want our organization to be on this scale? Do we want us to be in a place where, look, we need to be around ourselves? It's okay, and that's what we should push each other to be, right? Or do we want to be in a place, we want to be in the discomfort's place? Do we want to be in the investigative place where we're working hard, but we haven't quite closed the loop? And tomorrow is the esoteric tomorrow. Over there, then, maybe after we've rotated off, maybe after we've retired. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and what are our results? All right, for those that cannot see, that's 0% in the hesitant, 0% in the discomfort, about 5% in investigating, 29 in experimenting, 67 in engaging, right? So 67% of us saying we want to be in that engaging place where it's natural and organic for us to, throughout this sort of DIBS Big Nine space, where we understand and recognize the value of this in a variety of ways, okay? Next question. Today, again, today, May 25th, where do you rate yourself? The person sitting in your seat right now. Where are you? Hey, James, I really, when it comes to these, I just would rather be around people that are like me. It makes me feel comfortable. The world's too hot right now, and I'm not there. Hey, James, I'm working really, really hard. It's experimenting. I'm working hard, but it's effort. It takes a ton of effort for me to do this. It is not easy for me, so I choose experimenting. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Investigating, I want to do more. Maybe I should or could, but I haven't watched the podcast that I have saved. I haven't talked to the friend or colleague or peer that I probably could or should talk to. 3, 2, 1, what are our results? 4% 0% hesitant, 4% in discomfort, 18% in investigating, 40% in experimenting, 38% in engaging, right? And people ask me often, well, periodically people say, James, when you see the results, when you ask this question and it's about the people in the room, what do I think about what I see? Do I think that people overrank themselves? Maybe, it's possible, but I like it. I like that people think, whatever way they think about themselves. You get to choose, right? So let's take a look at the next question. Tomorrow, where do you want to be? In that esoteric tomorrow. Maybe I could see where somebody says, look, the world is hot. I'm going to move to Montana. I'm going to get myself a cabin with me and people like me, and we're going to barbecue and hunt moose. I think there's moose in Montana, I think. I don't have any confirmation of that directly. Maybe people like, tomorrow I want to keep working. I'm in the experimenting place. There's going to be some kind of new situation that occurs that we're faced with, and I want to keep working. I like the struggle. I like the work. Some of like, hey, engaging. I want it to be natural and organic for me. 5-4, 3-2, and what do our results say? 0% hesitant for those that cannot see, 0% at discomfort, 3% at investigating, 9% at experimenting, 88% in engaging. Now, I will share with you that your leadership group basically look like this too, right? And what I see here, what my response to this, if somebody were to ask, is I see optimism, I see hope, right? Maybe the storm clouds are on us right now. Maybe it's tough right now. Maybe it's gonna get worse before it gets better. Maybe. I mean, we're entering a political season and it may get stirred up. Karen, these results don't make sense. Do you want to pop off really quick and give us your thinking? Because if the other people are thinking what you're thinking, I want to make sure I'm hearing you.
So the results showed that we think that the membership is not, that we're more like, it was a bell curve.
Yes.
Start from hesitant all the way to that. But then there was a slide that showed that we thought that we were engaging and interested, like we were in the more progressive area, right?
Yes.
So aren't we the membership? So does that mean we think that the
Good
other
question. Thank you for that.
But
so
you know,
what I hear people, how I interpret it, and as I've done this a few times, people are looking at the membership as all of them plus me. All of us plus me, right? And then when I'm asked to look at just me, I'm seeing just me, right? So the first question about where do I see the membership is all of these folks, all of them plus me, right? As opposed to how do I look at myself in the mirror? I'm just looking at one human in the mirror, and what do I think of myself? And so to your point, there's an argument for these should be a lot more similar, right? These should be, could be a lot more similar. But what I have found over time is that people are looking at the organization sometimes from a distance and then adding themselves in as one human, or I know 5 people, or I know 20 people, or I know 30 people. It's sort of like if you happen to like Cheesecake Factory, they're all over the country, sure. But your cheesecake in your neighborhood is the world of cheesecake to you, right? It's a similar kind of concept. Rana, if I mispronounce your name, please correct me immediately. What do you have for us? I see your hand was up.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that maybe Karen and we all need to remember is that the people who attend this webinar are to begin with people who are open to the concept of DEI. I'm a vascular surgeon on top of me also focusing on aortic, so I'm also an SVS member. And we've had these conversations in other societies where the people who are not interested in DEI, don't believe in DEI, are in the hesitant phase. A lot of them, the majority of them, will not attend those webinars. And so they also might not even answer those surveys. And so a lot of times I think you're in the disconnect between what we answer and what we think of the entire society is that many of the people that are answered and are here don't believe that they are the ones representing the rest of the society, that there is a larger group that is not attending here. And I don't know what James thinks about that, but that's one of the problems we've encountered.
Yeah, let me add on to that the sometimes I think there's the phrase preaching to the choir, right? There's a time suggesting that the people that come to these are the choir. They're the ones that are involved. They're the ones that are raising their hand. Hey, I want to be engaged. I want to be involved. I would phrase it just a little differently. I would say that the people that attend these are interested. They are engaged, even if they're on the other side, whatever the other side is. Right? They want to have their voice heard. They want to hear what's going on. And what we have to do is decide how do we bring everyone else in and oftentimes that's the big middle, right? The people, if it's a bell-shaped curve, that 20% and 20% show up to these kinds of town halls. We have to figure out how do we get that middle 50% to show up. So I think that I can co-sign, Ron, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name right. I can co-sign on like 78% of what you said, but that other 32% is the people that show up to these may not agree with what James believes around DEI, but I want to hear what's going on. I have something to say. I want my voice heard. Tom, what do you have for us?
Yeah, no, I think that it was interesting, everybody on the call, when you asked where we thought the membership was, it was in the middle. Where we thought we were closer towards engaging, but not all the way to where we thought we should be tomorrow. So, what I take away from that is, no matter where you're starting, there's still a way to go. I see that, as you said, that's optimistic, and I do think, to your point, James, is that we need to have kindness and we need to have grace. We need to give our fellow members the benefit of the doubt. I think the more that we talk about things, the more that we can help educate people. I think that, like us, they hopefully will see that there's still a ways to go.
With that said, I'm going to have about maybe 4 more slides, something like that. So let me jump on those and then we'll get deep into the rest of the Q&A. All right. So what we just went through is a really light 10,000, 100,000 foot view of the survey you're going to be taking. A series of other questions that are formatted differently. And so we'll gather that data. And then once we get that data, we'll report it back. But what will that look like? What will that be? As I mentioned before, the process is we will do the survey, we will do interviews and focus groups, my team will analyze and provide insights, and then we will do a roadmap presentation to the leadership group, and then we'll go from there in terms of how the cadence of that information is going to be presented out to the rest of the membership. The roadmap that we present is going to include a series of recommendations that could include some different kinds of workshops. Workshops meaning let's get smarter about something. It could be about coaching. Hey, I want to accelerate my understanding around a particular idea ahead of where a membership is. I, as an individual, coach me. I want to push me further. It could be additional town halls like this because maybe voices need to be heard in a variety of ways. Or there could be organizational statements of one kind or another. These are possible recommendations. The data will tell us what the recommendations are. The data will tell us what the roadmap should be. So I don't have answers for you on exactly what it's going to be, but I can tell you that in the past, the possible recommendations generally included workshops, coaching, sometimes town halls, organizational statements, these kinds of things. Now, one final thought before I jump into the Q&A in earnest, that we have to think about this idea of the right kind of uncomfortable. In today's marketplace, in any one of these sort of DEI spaces, the wrong kind of uncomfortable is I'm just going to light you on fire and watch you burn. The wrong is right. That's what people say, right? You are wrong. I'm just going to light you on fire and see what happens. I'm going to tell you you're wrong. I'm going to make fun of you. I'm going to highlight you. I'm going to YouTube you. And then I'm going to send it to everybody. Instead of saying, hey, Donnell, I was in a hospital when you said A, B, and C. Can we go to lunch? I'm not sure that you understand my particular background in a way that makes sense. I'd love for us to get better at this. That's the right kind of uncomfortable. Regardless of age or sexuality or political affiliation or religious background, can we help one another? Can we push one another? And can we keep each other the right kind of uncomfortable along this journey? The roadmap that we build for you is going to have this in mind. I would also hope that during the course of this discussion, you've gotten a sense for how I operate, which is to say, I call it like a no-nonsense approach. I like to say what it is needs to be said, but we have to wrap it sometimes in kindness and grace and maybe something that's funny. I realized a long time ago, as you all may have learned long before that humor helps the medicine go down sometimes. A smile helps the medicine go down sometimes. And when you have to give somebody tough news, sometimes you do it in full view of everybody. And sometimes you do it over here in the corner. We will find together the right ways to do this. It only works if you're involved. We only get there, wherever there is, if you're involved. if and when you're committed, my hope would be if a year from now or 6 months from now, we do another one of these town halls, it's going to be the yous that say, hey, why aren't you on the call? Where are you? You're supposed to be on the call. You're one of us. You're part of the team. You're a part of the membership. Why aren't you on the call? In fact, at the conclusion of this, there'd be nothing wrong with you calling your colleagues and say, why weren't you on the call? You had all of this to say last week. You had all of this to say after the speech. You had all of this to say in the last month or so. Why weren't you on the call? It was us. It was our time to be heard. If we're going to get to wherever it is that we want to be, if you are going to get to wherever it is you want to be, and it's 88% of us want to be in this engaging space, it only works if we're in it together. So with that being said, I'm going to pause and see where we are on questions. And then Tom, you and I can Jay-Z and Beyonce it and get it done.
Hey, James, when's tomorrow? That's a bunch of questions in the chat.
Sure. So I maybe folks didn't hear me, but the tomorrow is sort of, again, the esoteric tomorrow, right? That whenever we get to the end, whenever the end is, whenever we are, it could be after this cycle of leaders is gone. It could be after you have retired. It could be the organization you leave to that young person who's in high school right now. What do you want to leave to them? That's tomorrow. That's tomorrow.
James, there's a question from Dr. Romano, and she asks, how can you help us navigate when you are personally interested in engaging in the right kind of uncomfortable conversation, but what holds you back is that the recipient does not seem to like an approachable person or to engage in the conversation? How can we approach that hurdle?
Could you repeat it, just in case?
Help us navigate when you are personally interested in engaging in the right kind of uncomfortable conversation, but what holds you back is that the recipient does not seem to be approachable and to engage in that kind of converation. How would you deal with that?
The first thing I always do in these circumstances is I go over to the mirror and I look at that guy and say, why might not they be receiving me? I have a lot of control over me. Some things I can edit, right? Maybe I'm too loud. Maybe I'm too soft. Maybe I'm too harsh. Maybe I'm too subtle. Maybe I should invite them to dinner or lunch, or maybe it should be happy hour. Maybe I should figure out the right way to engage and invest with them. Think about how you might be engaging with this person or not, how you might be creating some differences or not, and try to find that common ground. That's the first thing I do is I look at myself. The second thing is I take a look at the person who's in front of me that I want to connect with and think about what do I know about them that can help to advantage this relationship, right? What can I do? If they like golf, I don't really care for golf, but maybe I'd be willing to go because this conversation is so important, right? They like to smoke cigars. They like to go to the wine bar. They like to go walking. What am I willing to do to invest in this relationship? Am I willing to inconvenience myself so that you and me can have a deep connection? And if James is unwilling to do it, then I look in the mirror and say, James, you might be the person with a challenge.
James, another question on a couple of questions actually on metrics. One of them asks, from a strict metric standpoint, in addition to embracing and living the concept of diversity in general, is there such a thing as data-driven diversity, and how do we know that we're making progress?
So I would bring us back to, if we can remember the slide, diversity here, inclusivity here. Diversity is pretty easy to measure, especially for the things we can legally ask, right? So let's put that over here for a second. How do we measure inclusivity? How do we measure whether or not somebody believes that they belong? We've spent a lot of time coming up with a variety of questions to do that put us in the position of being able to say we're in the hesitant space or discomfort or engaging or experimenting, et cetera. So we gather the data with the idea that measuring diversity is one thing, measuring inclusivity is another. Now, underneath inclusivity, think about two buckets. There's the interpersonal bucket, me, you, the things you and I can work on if I want to move from discomfort to experimenting. What can I work on? Right? Where am I with it? But if I want to go from discomfort to experimenting, here's the roadmap to get me there. I can do 3 of these things. I can do 5 of these things. I can do 10 of these things within the next 6 months. That's the kind of roadmap that will help to build. The other piece, the interpersonal, and then there's structural. structural components of inclusivity. How do we build a nominating committee? How do we build a leadership team? What are the pathways to becoming a leader at STS? What are the pathways to becoming a surgeon? Those are the structural pieces. So we'll have some recommendations that will be interpersonally related, and that's also where we find leadership aspects, and then some that are structurally put together. And then the suggestions that we have will be designed in such a way that they are KPI oriented so that you can measure them and whether or not they were done.
Great. We have another question that actually came in advance for both Dr. MacGillivray and you, James. Many organizations, including ours, are not in agreement with DEI work. Some believe it is not going too far or fast enough, and others believe it's too woke and canceling people is wrong. What do you think? James, want to take first shot at that?
Sure. I think you all have to decide what it means for you. You have the authority, the power, and the responsibility to say that over here, this is what diversity is for us. Over here, this is what inclusivity is for us. If we allow these outside influences to impact how you view your organization, then I might suggest to you that other people are controlling your organization. People have different agendas. What's yours? People have different areas of impetus. What's yours? Other people have different catalysts for their behavior. What is yours? We in the diversity 1.0 environment, a lot of the shifts and changes came from the bottom up, grassroots, frontline kind of folk raising their hand and saying, okay, I want something to change. Or outside environmental factors that impacted organizations saying you should change. Rarely did the leaders of the organizations say, this is how we're going to drive the change within our organization. My suggestion is that this organization, and you as leaders, decide this is who we are, this is how we define ourselves, and this is what we're going to do to create this kind of difference over time. Dr. MacGillivray, do you have a?
Yeah, so, since January, I've been talking to a lot of people and listening to a lot of people. And there are a wide range of opinions, just as Charlie said. And, in my view, I see the STS as an organization that members are at different levels of the construct that you presented to us, everything from being hesitant and uncomfortable to engaging. And I think that we have to make everyone feel welcome to have their point of view and be willing to learn and to become better with everything that we do. And I think I keep coming back to, James, what you said before. We need to have grace. We need to have people be willing to stand up and say what they think and engage in respectful conversation and discussion about it. And I hope all of us who are trained in science and trained in data and trained in evidence will be willing to take that data and take that evidence and become smarter and be better.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Dr. Stevens. Data from our specialty have shown that those in the majority view the minority's experience differently from how the minority voices their own experience. In other words, the majority views the culture as much more supportive of the minority than the minority actually experiences. How do you deal with that, James?
I think the first thing is saying that out loud. And I can co-sign on that across industries, right? That often that the majority population, the population in power, has a false view of how the minority population or the underrepresented, if I can use that language, population is experiencing the specialty, is experiencing the organization. And so it's tearing down those biases, tearing that down, saying, look, you are seeing it like this, but the truth is it might be different or it is different. Now, then how do we create the pathways or the pipelines for that? And that could be, as I mentioned before, the town halls or the workshops or the coaching, right? It wouldn't, the next time that we're asked to take a team of leaders and say, can you help them get an understanding of what the experience is for this other group within the organization? Can you help them do that? The next time it happens, the first will not be the first time. It'll be the 100th time. It is a very normal thing for the overrepresented group, if you will, or the group in power, to not have a good idea of what the underrepresented group is experiencing. Right. One of the examples I use is one of the things I've never been able to experience. My mother says one of the worst things about being a guy is that I've never thought about having a baby, like holding a baby inside of me and giving birth. I've never thought about it. She's right. Like I as a guy haven't, maybe other people have it. I haven't. Right. And my mom's big on moms. She's huge on moms. And so her thinking is that in the absence of me being able to do that, I'm missing something. That's her thought process, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about, I think it's the Michael Jordan movie that's coming out, and there's a spot in there where the woman who's playing the mom says, she's being interviewed, she says, being a mom is the best thing in the world somebody could be. And I wrote a note to my friend, I said, what about fathers? What about us? We're kind of important. And he says, well, isn't it up to us to say that? I said, oh, that's a good point. Right? So exposing the powerful group to the underrepresented thought in a meaningful way that doesn't light them on fire, that doesn't tell them they're horrible people, that instead says, do you care about me? Do you want me to be the best? Can you listen to me for a moment? If not today, then maybe tomorrow you can listen to me. And it takes time at times, but it can be done.
So we have a
Great.
few minutes, James. So there are a couple of more questions. Charlie, you want to?
Yeah, there's one from Dr. Vaporsian. All right, it'd be great if you could vocalize your question. Not sure.
Sure.
I understand it.
Dr. Pogue, you talked about the right and wrong kind of uncomfortable. Unfortunately, it seems to me that the wrong kind of uncomfortable conversation is more frequently encountered because it's easier to do. You just state your position and make a statement that everybody else is wrong. How do you engage in a conversation with that person and shift? And this may be exactly the same thing that Dr. Romano was asking.
Yeah, we have to be cautious in the beginning that everybody's not ready for the conversation you or I or we want to have. And it's okay to tap out, right? I said, hey, whoa, I'm not ready to hear you yelling or fussing at me, and you're not ready for my conversation. Can we put a pin in this for next week? Can we put a pin in it for next month? Can we put a pin in it for next year? There were people in the board meeting that said, I've known this person next to me for 10, 15, 20 years. And maybe today is the time you can have that conversation that unpacks why they wanted to be a surgeon to begin with, why it was so hard for them, why they give back in this way, but not in this way. It takes a lifetime to have a lifetime of experiences, right? And sometimes it can take a piece of a lifetime to have a deep conversation with somebody that we thought we knew very well.
So James, do we have time just for a few more questions? So Jimmy Edgerton, John Meyer, and then Mark Ruel, and then we'll close up. Is that okay? Jimmy? You're in mute. You're muted, Jimmy.
Thank you very much. James, thanks for your whole presentation. I want to go back to one of the very beginning slides and a statement and I do this at some risk because you said you may be afraid of speaking up for fear you're canceled. So when I say this, y'all may say, oh, this guy, he just doesn't get it. We got to get him out of leadership. But you made a statement very early on that I find myself in agreement with, but it fell in the hesitant group, which the implication is you're kind of an undeveloped human if you got a lot of development to be if you find yourself in hesitant. And the statement was, I don't need to have these conversations in the workplace. Now, I don't care if you're purple polka dotted, as long as you're not nice to my wife and kids. You don't even have to be nice to me. You're okay with me. I don't care what gender you want to be. I don't care about any of that. If I'm here today to write a statement about the treatment of atrial fibrillation, let's just get to that. I don't care about the other. You're okay with me. So why is that wrong? Why is that the underdeveloped human?
So let me start with.
I make that understandable.
Sure, I think so. I'll respond and you'll let me know if I didn't get it. You get to be exactly where you want to be. I have no problem with people being where they are. The question is, where would you like to be? Right? And then as an organization, where do we as an organization want to be? If a person says, look, I just don't think it belongs in the workplace, fine. My question might be, are you willing to hear why somebody disagrees? Right? And then beyond that, can you put yourself in a position, especially if you're a leader, if you're raising your hand and saying, I'm a leader, do you understand my perspective that is different from yours well enough to defend it, even though you disagree? I happen to be a military veteran. I believe strongly in that idea. I will disagree with you all day, up, down, left, center, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. I just think you're really wrong. Right? So if the first step is, I believe what I believe, I am where I am. The second step is, can I hear why somebody might disagree with me? Am I willing to do that? And then beyond that, if I'm going to call myself a leader, do I understand it well enough to articulate it and defend your right to say it? Because maybe, just maybe, somebody might change my mind. Maybe.
Thanks, James. Dr. Meyer, John Meyer.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I think it's very thought-provoking and important. I would just reflect on my own personal journey and be interested in your thoughts about whether or not we should be learning more about ourselves, because I think somebody famous, Socrates, I think, always talked about know thyself, right? And I would say one of the things that I've done is to read a book called Blind Spot that I think is basically about the implicit biases that we all have. We're all Homo sapiens, imperfect, Homo sapiens. And you alluded to that earlier, that, we all have our own biases, implicit or otherwise. I personally think, for me, that was a pretty important exercise to read that book. My wife was the one who prompted me to do it. And, to take, even if you don't read the whole book, take the implicit association tests that the authors of that book developed. I think that would really be a useful exercise, because a lot of us, I think there's this sort of, am I really biased? Does that mean I'm a bad person? And, I think that's part of the discomfort. And my own sense is that if we recognize that we're all human and we have some of these implicit, maybe not even cognitively understood biases, it will help us going forward.
Sure. John, thank you so much for that. And I think that it tees up something that has been an interesting piece of work for us, which is book clubs. And saying, hey, here's the book that an organization has decided that it wants to read, and break people into groups to take 10 or 15 or 7 or 8 or 25 or whatever. And they go through a discussion series around, as with the book as the topic, led by a facilitator, right? Because the ways that we begin to understand one another, there's a bunch of tools to do it. And we have to find the right ways to do it. Our job will be to build that roadmap that helps you to say, okay, these are the kinds of things we can do. Your job is to decide, to choose, if you want to jump off the cliff, individually, as teams, as organizations, as a profession. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, the reality is leadership is optional. It's optional in your house. It's optional on your team. It's optional in your hospital. It's optional in this organization. I think that in order for us to make it to wherever there is the esoteric tomorrow, that we have to pick up the yoke of leadership and lead. We have in the past allowed other areas to lead us, and it's gotten us to this point. good, bad, or indifferent, this is where we are. Our educational leaders, our political leaders, our religious leaders, our otherwise leaders have gotten us to this point. Now the baton is squarely in front of you. You have to choose whether you're going to grasp it and push, or you're going to say, okay, maybe next time, maybe tomorrow. Okay, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. Okay. But the choice is yours. And I think that part of my job is to be as plain with you, as no nonsense as I can be. You want change to happen, you're going to have to make it happen. Nobody's going to give you anything. You're going to have to go get it. The same way that each of you have gone to get the position that you're in now, you want some change to happen, then we have to go get it. And I'm happy to be on the journey to help you. That being said, we're 6 minutes after, and I apologize for those people who had to pop off. But I would just say, hope the next one of these we have at least this many people. Call your buddies and tell them, hey, the survey's coming, get excited about it, whatever excited can be, I don't know. But tell them that Jay-Z and Beyonce are on tour. We're doing big things, and a survey along with a bunch of other information is coming your way. Jay-Z, you want to take us home?
Thanks, Beyonce. Yeah, well, I want to thank, first of all, the terrific STS staff for putting all this together, and James, your staff, to coordinating with the STS staff. I want to thank everybody who's here tonight, and I want to thank you, James, for leading a great session and answering questions. So for everybody, good night and good afternoon, and we'll look forward to the next time.